a really well-known and very important character throughout all of Piggy, as well as being the main antagonist of Piggy Book 1. If you need a reminder, I'll gladly explain. You see, Mr. P was a popular celebrity in the 1970s, as all of Piggy, as well as being the main antagonist of Piggy Book 1. If you need a reminder, I'll gladly explain. You see, Mr. P was a popular celebrity in the 1970s, as well as being a millionaire. He even got interviewed by protection services through mechanics and machines. That part will become important later, but anyways, over time he soon later became a billionaire. Life was going great for him, but then unfortunately his wife Mrs. P contracted a disease known as linioma. So Mr. P went on and formed a research group to find a cure to his wife's sickness, which then later created Substance 128. The doctors told Mr. P that the substance was unstable, but he didn't listen. He needed to find volunteers to test the supposed cure. And that's where the Pitty family came in, all except for Georgie. They claimed to feel stronger after taking the potion. This made Mr. P overjoyed and gave it to his wife. But then later, the Piggy family was said to become hostile. Later, Mrs. P also started to become aggressive as well. Mr. P knew he had to stop her, but he didn't have the heart to, and because of this, it caused the infection, which later leads to the events of the first 4 chapters of Book 1. During this time, Mr. P managed to recruit a couple of surviving researchers to make a new cure and hope to find other survivors, as well as going on a supply run at the school. They managed to find a teacher and hunt, but then later turned into an infected. So both Bunny and Mr. P locked themselves in different parts of the school to hide from the now infected teacher. Later came the player, who rescued Bunny and brought her back to Mr. P. And then the player felt sick and fainted. So Bunny and Mr. P took the player to a nearby hospital. Mr. P, along with the remaining researchers, found signs of the infection within the player, and before they can do more research, the hospital they were in was raided. Bunny was attacked, so Mr. P gave her a potion. After realizing the mistake he did, he left both Bunny and the player behind and went on a helicopter to a military outpost. And during the events of Chapter 7 through Chapter 11, Mr. P was getting his potato limbs replaced with mechanical ones, basically turning him into a cyborg potato. And in Chapter 12, the player, along with Georgie Piggy, came to finally take down Mr. P. For all the things is done, but unfortunately for Mr. P is a mess. He's starting to hallucinate all the people. He's failed to protect the ones that is left behind, and others that are infected, as well as believing they've come to haunt him for his mistakes. But luckily he manages to snap back to reality, and then explains to both the player and Georgie. Now the infection starts, and later departs ways with them to fight off the remaining infected in the plant. And that's as much as we know about Mr. P so far. Well, besides from being mentioned a couple times in Book 2, as well as making an appearance in Regarding the Rumors, and appearing as a hallucination in the Decay chapter. Also, according to the wiki, he is considered a joke and a nuisance to the scientific community, since he was the one who started the infection. Even to use his Mr. P as the perfect example of how freedom ruined the world seems a bit harsh, don't you think? I mean, to be fair, the guy just wanted to save his dying wife. But besides all of that, we don't really know what exactly happened to Mr. P. After Book 1 now, I know there are some content creators going over on what they think happened to Mr. P, but almost all of them end up with the same result. It's either Mr. P gets infected or he joins the insolence, mainly because it seems like the most obvious choice. And because of this model shown by this guy in his theory, and I'm going to say this right now, this is probably a scrap model, or probably meant for something else. But besides all this, I'm here to solve it myself. First, let's take a good look at Mr. P. Now we can clearly see that is a cyborg potato. Sweet potato to be exact. But the question is, how could Mr. P turn to a cyborg? Now some people think it was Badgie who was capable of doing this before turning into an infected, but here's the thing, Badgie is one of the original researchers who worked on the cure for Mrs. P, and throughout the plant there was no signs of any tools or equipment that could have helped turn Mr. P to a cyborg, meaning it couldn't be Badgie because he's not an engineer, but instead it was someone else. Remember when I said the interview of Mr. P was important? That's because he was being interviewed by the company Protection Services through Mechanics and Machines, or PSTMM for short, and wouldn't you know it, the company is filled with engineers and people who know something about robotics. And in Regarding the Rumors, Mr. P is being interviewed as one of their clients, so it's possible that Mr. P has some sort of connection to PSTMM, and it's also possible that they are the ones who helped Mr. P turn into a cyborg in order to protect him from the infected. I mean, it's literally in the name. But this still doesn't answer our question. What exactly happened to Mr. P? If you remember in the Outpost chapter, You can see Mr. P helicopter parked outside of the plant, so it's possible that Mr. P flew away in his helicopter to another military outpost, specifically the same outpost that the camp chapter takes place. And just like the outpost in book 1, it also has a lab inside a secret base. And the reason I believe this is where Mr. P went is because of one specific character, the main mascot of the game, Penny Piggy. Now in book 2, chapter 12, Distorted Penny is the bot for the chapter. But have you ever wondered why or how did she get there? The camp takes place in the north. Well, to answer the question, we are gonna have to go back to book 1, chapter 1 now. I covered in my last video that the infected actually had control over their body when they first turned, but view the survivors as infected. Penny is one of the original infected, and chapter 1 takes place when the infection first starts. So that would explain why Penny didn't automatically kill the player, but instead just knocks the player out, locks them in the house, because since she's just a kid or a teenager, she doesn't have the heart to kill. So once the player leaves the house, so did Penny Piggy, and it's revealed in chapter 4 that the infection was going on for a month. By then in all the later chapters happen in one day, because we don't know how long the player was knocked out for in chapter 6, so it's most likely that Penny has been wandering off during that time. It's possible that once Mr. P takes off on his helicopter, he spots Penny and knocks her out and takes her to a different outpost to run some experiments on her. But why her? Why is she chosen to be the one to experiment on? Is it to parallel the final chapter to the very first one, or was it because of one character, everyone's favorite member of the Piggy family, Georgie Piggy? If you remember back in the plant chapter, Georgie and Mr. P did have a small conversation, which means Mr. P knows Georgie is still alive, and that is with the player. But here's the problem with this. Mr. P thinks that Georgie only has the eye left because his entire family is infected. And you also got to keep in mind, Mr. P never encountered any of the members of the Safe Place group. Also, Zizzy and Pony were outside the plant, fighting off the infected soldiers. So I believe the reason why Mr. P chose Penny, because he wants to cure her, so he can reunite Georgie with his older sister, which could explain why the infected from the true ending cutscene are missing, because they are being experimented on in different outposts. But anyways, unfortunately for Penny, she never gets cured, though the first couple of samples only manage to reduce her aggression, but it doesn't fully cure her, and at one point, she eventually escapes her testing chamber. But how? Well, this is because she was let out by Tio. If you remember, there were multiple infected with orange eyes, and it's confirmed by the wiki that infected with orange eyes can possibly have connections to the insulin. So when Mr. P and the scientists are trying to make a cure, while also getting made fun of behind his back, the insolence attacks the camp, wipes out the military, because Tio doesn't want them to create a cure, since he's the reason the infection started. In an earlier theory I said that Tio was kicked out of the original insolence group because he was reckless, he causes the infection. But I never said how, though since Tio is capable of manipulating people, it's possible that he tricked the original group of researchers into putting the wrong ingredients, which later made the potion unstable. Some more evidence to back this up is this night. Back in the season 1 journal entry, it says they warned me, but he told me I did it, and this is how I am repaid, with insufferable pain and guilt. These burdens are far too much for me to carry now. He won't go away, he never does. He'll get what he deserves. I know it was all Tio's doing. He was the reason Substance 128 was created, was the one who convinced Mr. P to give the potion to his wife, which later caused the infection, and let Mr. P to feel guilty, as well as regretting the actions he's made, even though it wasn't fully his fault. Which also leads to a question. What does T0 want out of all of this? While I actually know the answer, Tio wants full control over the insulin. Tio caused the infection so he can so-called help those who are in desperate need of it. But in reality, he's tricking them into becoming his soldiers, and bit by bit he's slowly creating his army to fight the original insolence group, so then he can later take out Mr. Stitching permanently, because of what he did to Tio in the past. But unfortunately for Tio, he has a skill issue, and gets defeated by a regular human being, so sucks to be him. But anyways, back to Mr. P. When the military was wiped out, soon the lab was being raided, so Mr. P, along with researchers, would obviously try to escape. But unfortunately, the researchers weren't so lucky. Cause Penny was let out of her testing chamber, but it's possible that Mr. P managed to escape. Take a good look at Distorted Penny. We can see that her body is decaying, as well as part of her body being covered by some black substance after she joined the insulins. But what if this isn't because of Penny's body decay, but instead it's because of Mr. P? These two characters see each other when the lab is being raided, and Mr. P had no other option but to defend himself against the infected Penny, and as a result, left permanent damages across Penny's body, as well as giving Mr. P a chance to escape. Later Tio finds the now injured Penny and convinces her to join the insolence, which made her look even more distorted. So in conclusion, Mr. P is alive somewhere out there. We just don't know what is up to and where he is, and even if this theory gets debunked, or makes no sense, I still believe Mr. P is alive. But not as an infected, because he's capable of defending himself. And not as a member of the insolence, because he wouldn't trust the person who tricked him into causing the infection. But instead Mr. P is alive as a survivor, trying to fix a mistake that he thinks he caused. Also, this theory was originally going to go a different route, so if you wanna see it, I'll put it in the description below. But anyways, comment down below what you guys think of this, and subscribe for more Piggy theory, because I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, so please consider subscribing. But anyways, have a good rest of your day.